Hello, Jonathan Agnew here as we walk down memory lane with a classic view from the boundary. Today we're going back to July 1991 and a test match between England and West Indies at Edgbaston. England were struggling at 4-2 in their second innings, with the tourists on their way to taking a 2-1 lead in the 5-match series. The West Indies attack featured the likes of Ambrose, Patterson, Walsh and Marshall. England were led by Graham Gooch, with Hugh Morris making the first of 3 test appearances. In the old commentary box at the city end of the ground, we were joined by the then England football manager Greham Taylor, a passionate cricket fan and fascinating student of the psychology of coaching. With a steel band playing on the outfield, Taylor told Brian Johnston about his love for the game.
My heroes basically were more of a national basis, really, because I was a minor counties situation. My first things were obviously May and Ken Barrington. Ken Barrington I never met, but I used to. When unfortunately, when I heard that he'd passed away, it was one of the things that will always remain with me. The fact that Ken Barrington had died to a relatively young man as I was at the time was very upsetting. I'd never met the man, but he was a throwback to my boyhood, where these people meant a lot to me. And I'll always remember Ken Barrington. I never met him.
He was a very intense character, took things terribly to heart.
Did he? Yes.
And I took him back after he'd played up here, and he played a very, very slow innings up to, I think he was about an hour between 89 to 100.
Yes.
And then when he got to 100, he hit 5 falls running or something.
Yes.
And he got tremendously criticised for that. And I took him back, and he was so depressed, and it meant so much to him, because he was actually dropped for one test match. He came back and made a couple more hundreds, of course. But he was, everything meant so much to him, and on this West Indies tour, a particular one, he'd taken it very badly.
Mind you, we've just seen Marshall stay an hour without scoring, and nobody makes any comment about that.
No. Well, yeah, I know, but because he fought for England. I mean, it was like seeing the Union Jack walk out when Barrington went up.
Well, I think probably that was something that
he'd be the sort of character you would love to have in any football team.
Well, I think in anything, and I think at the present situation, I mean, even the cricket situation, when you're up against it, you want the fighters. You've got to have the fighters. You've got to have those people who show some stickability. I mean, I know that you've asked me about the football scene. I mean, basically, over the last 3 seasons, certainly since the last European Nations Cup in Germany, the England football team have had some very good results. I mean, they've played 38 games and only lost twice. That's at national level. And it has a very, very good run. And I mean, I'm pleased to be in the latter part of it, but I very much recognise that it's when you come to the European Championships, it's when you come to the World Cup that people actually assess in their minds how successful any national side is. But it's a good run over 3 years that the football side has had.
You realise your captain is a very good wicketkeeper.
Oh, I realise that, yes.
You let him off enough to play.
Well, fortunately, as I say, he's contracted to Tottenham, and that's their problem. But I know that Gary is very, very interested and is a good cricketer in his own right.
But he could have played for Leicestershire, I think, at cricket, and he's a member of MCC by right. I mean,
Well, he actually did. I mean, I think I'm about sort of 8,000 and odd in the list, and I just miss out. I really was rather foolish, because I believe if you play so many games for certain teams,
if you're put up to be a player, you can play 6 games in one season, 6 the next.
Something before you're 40 or 41. Though I was reading all of these regulations, and I looked at it, and when I was reading these, I was 42, and I thought I've missed out again. So I'm about 8,000 on the list. They keep asking me for extra little bits of money to get me lower down the list. So.
Do you bowl at all?
No, I'm not really a bowler. I like the batting. I like batting in a funny sort of way. My father has always said to me that one of the worst things, and I suppose I'll open a sort of talking point here, but one of the worst things he ever did was to send me for coaching. He said that when I was before I had that, when I saw the ball, I used to try to hit it, and when I came back from coaching, then in fact I tried to play everything technically correct, and that he always felt that as a young, I think he would have very much liked me actually to have been able to develop not only my footballing ability, which fortunately I got a career in professional football, but my cricketing ability as well. But he often felt that after I had about 18 months coaching, And I came back and I then tried to play everything. Now, I always remember as a young lad, anything down my leg side as a left-hander, I loved it. Yeah. But then after the coaching, I seemed to have to play every ball properly.
I think, you see, your coaches went right. I mean, you get someone like Dennis Compton, who was a natural. He went to a chap called Archie Fowler at Lord's in the 30s, who saw him and said, right, I won't tell you anything, but he did just teach him the very basic forward and defensive stroke, because Dennis, in the end, was one of the best defensive batsmen, if necessary.
Yeah.
But they let him do all the unorthodox strokes. Don't try and do the orthodox.
I'm sure that's right. I'm sure. I mean, and being involved and being accused of many things, really, as a manager, and listening to people say as coaches as well. I mean, I think that the worst thing to no coaching, in many respects, is better than bad coaching, and I've always believed that. I always look back. I don't know really, the person who's responsible for me, but one thing I remember about that coaching was this business that you must play yourself in. Now, prior to that, if a ball had been bowled to me, the first ball, and it was there for hitting, I always used to think, well, you know, you used to hit that one. But that's one thing I always remember: play yourself in. And I tended, whenever I play cricket, to be quite boring. But the worst thing about trying to play yourself in, I always find, is if you get out, because
you've lost the whole thing anyhow.
You've lost it anyhow, you know.
But basically, a bad ball is a bad ball.
Well,
it's the first ball
that's
or
that.
not.
But anyhow, not that I would ever have made any real level as a cricketer, but I enjoyed it.
I don't know. I know you've been manager of Lincoln, Watford, and Aston Villa. How much coaching have you done yourself?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the interesting thing, because I think that I've done a reasonable amount of coaching, but I'm a big believer in playing to people's strengths, and I've always believed that. In other words, I don't believe in taking people out and coaching on a real weakness that they have. I believe in coaching people to their strengths, because I think that's something that a person is good at. One is interested in getting better at that, and I think that it gives him a tremendous amount of confidence, and consequently any weaknesses, and we all have weaknesses, I tend to feel that those weaknesses improve through having a greater confidence. I think if you concentrate very much so on somebody's weaknesses, you don't necessarily get the big rewards. I think if you coach on somebody's strengths, you get big rewards. And then the weaknesses, because nobody's perfect, the weaknesses look after themselves, because the strengths come through and they override the weaknesses. So in many respects, I'd like to think that both individually and collectively, my coaching is based on, or has been based very much on, getting people to believe in themselves and to do what they're good at, and to do it even better, and to let the bad things look after themselves and ignore them.
You've got to be a tremendous psychologist, though, haven't you? You've got to treat every single person differently, because everyone is different.
Well, everyone is different. All this business, you know, about people say, I don't like it when people say he treats everybody the same, because I don't. I'll treat you the same if you are the same, but you're not, so you treat everybody differently. But I think overall what you try to do is to try to get a feeling that in fact you have a great confidence in your own ability, and collectively. I think that's very important.
How do you get to know people? I know there's a circuit, you go around it a lot, but to get to know an individual, do you wait till he comes to join the team, or
well, I mean, I was 20 years as a manager, because I had to finish the game relatively at a young age.
Well, just tell us about it. You had a hip trouble.
I had a hip injury, yes. So I finished when I was 28, and I became the manager of Lincoln. I mean, basically, I became the manager simply because there was a boardroom difference, as there tends to be in football, and somebody supported me. Yes, well, it's no different, is it, really, in any shape. And my first 9 games as a manager, we drew 7 and lost 2. And I remember people at Sinsel Bank at Lincoln shouting, "Taylor out, Taylor out." Now, when you're 28 years of age and you're married and you've 2 girls under sort of 4 as they were at that time, or under 3, and you've got a mortgage. Now that's pressure. Pressure's not the top of the first division, and pressure in many respects is not really being the manager of the England side. Pressure really is basically if you get out of a job and you don't know where your next job is going to come from.
I tell you what I'd always done. If I'd been a manager, before I signed a contract, I would say I cannot be sacked in the middle of the season. I'm prepared to be sacked at the end of the season, or to my contract to be terminated. I think sacked is an awful word, anyhow.
Well, I think there are 2 things really that we ought to look at, really, from managers' points of view. I think that it's a give and take. I think if you can't be sacked, then neither should you walk out.
No,
I think in that situation,
you abide by your contract.
I think in that situation, I think contract should be something. But unfortunately, not just in football, but in a lot of sports, contracts seem to be just a word now. Yeah. And when it suits either party, they're very easily terminated one way or the other. And that I think doesn't help the status or standing of any of the professional games.
I mean, how are you influenced by the press? You get a bad press. I mean, Paul Mickey Stewart gets a bad press. When things go right, it's all okay. But I mean, do you read them a lot? Do you try and meet the people and talk to them about it?
I think what I try to do, in fact, be very open in terms of answer questions. You know that you're going to be abused. I mean, the disappointing aspect is that so many things that you say are abused and misused to create headlines. But I don't think I'm particularly going to alter that. So one of the things that I very, very much decided is that, and I don't mean to be offensive to anyone, but I basically read as little as I can. Far more people know about the things I'm certain that have been written about me and about my team than I do know. So, and it's the best way to go about it.
Now, another thing, we are slightly critical these days of the training methods used by cricket. We think they overdo it, and that if you play enough cricket, you don't need to do all these extraordinary exercises. We look back on the past when they didn't have pulled hamstrings and all these sort of things, the Achilles tendon, and now they tend to, and yet they run around the ground for 40 minutes.
Yes.
What is your view of the training of cricket?
Well, I mean, I don't know too much about the training. What I do know, you have to be fit to play it. You have to be fit. In this day and age, you have to be fit to play any sport at the top level. Now, what I do know is this: there are specific fitnesses, and that I, as a professional footballer, before I became a manager, in my opinion, was fit to play football, but I'm pretty certain I wouldn't have been fit to play cricket. Yeah. There's a complete difference between getting fit to play football and being fit to sometimes stand and field for a day and a half, and also to bat with the concentration. So I think there's specific ways of being fit, but I really do believe to play any sport at the highest level in this day and age, and I think we've all got to be very steady. We look back and we say it was like this and we say we did this, but I think we've got to be very steady as to when we look back and say, well, what was right and what was correct so many years ago is now right and correct here. And I think that the level of fitnesses to play at the highest level of any professional sport, I think you do have to get a degree of fitness. Now, how you obtain that in cricket is up to the people who play cricket. I wouldn't be so stupid as to come and say that I know how you can get cricketers fit, because I've never had to stand in a field for a day.
I mean, undoubtedly football now is much faster because they're so much fitter.
Yes.
And in the old days when I used to go and watch Alex James and stuff, I mean, he had all the time in the world to sell 4 dummies and pass the ball 3 times, and he wouldn't get away with it today.
Well, no, but I think cricket must be the same, Brian. I mean, I see these fellas bowling, and the pace that these fellas are bowling. I mean, now I've never played it, but I mean, it's wrong. So many people talk to me about the England football side, or not necessarily talk to me, to talk about it. And the interesting thing, I consider myself, rightly or wrongly, an expert in that field. I don't consider myself an expert in either cricket or athletics, which are my next loves. So I can spectate at cricket, and I can spectate at athletics far better than I can do at football. I'm like Freddie Truman, when he sits and watches. I've been listening to him. There is an ex-top-class professional cricketer, and I would say this: he's watching this game with a very critical eye. Now, I watch football like that, and I think I'm probably a bit like Fred when I watch football matches. But when I'm watching cricket, I'm spectating.
And I think, isn't he a hard so-and-so? For a minute, I'm appointing you manager of the cricket team now for about a minute and a half during the lunch interval. What would you do in the dressing room now? Would you say anything to them? Would you leave it to the captain, who's after all still batting?
Oh, well,
what would you do?
Captain or manager, what it is now, you're in there, you're scrapping, boys. I tell you what, you're scrapping now, and you're scrapping on a wicket that's unpredictable.
Right.
Now, there's not a lot we can do about it. If you get a ball that now shoots through like that, there's not a lot you can do about it. If you get a ball that comes up over your head, there's not much you can do about it. But you can do something about silly shots. You can do something about that. And I think that's the thing that you're saying now, and you've got to have a great belief in yourself. And what you don't want to do, you don't want to be walking about with your heads down. I mean, I'm risking things here, and I know I'm on the air, but like you and a few of us, I would have liked to see Mike Atherton get to the wicket a bit quick.
He walked in very dejected, as if he didn't want to play.
And I'm saying this, you know, with all it creates an image, you see, and people look at that and they wonder, well, hold on a minute. Now, they may be totally wrong, and I could be wrong saying this, but you're watching that, and there's a lot of supporters here are watching that. And you've got to say, hey, we're in here for a scrap and we're here for a fight. But this is, I don't care what anybody says, this is the best cricket side in the world.
Oh, of course they are. I mean, yes, I mean they are a marvellous side, West Indies. We mustn't take that away. There is this difference, you see, with cricket. The captain on the field is in charge and can be visibly in charge. It's very difficult to see what your relationship with the captain in soccer is, the manager. You're sitting there on the bench or in the director's thing. How much does the captain have to say out on the field?
Well, I think it's different. One of the biggest things I think that we do find is that the leaders tend to be less and less probably in this game. We all tend to want to follow a little bit. I think it's a way of society more than anything else. But we don't have so many characters. When I say characters, I'm not talking generally. Yeah. Characters in terms of leadership. In football, I think the amount of excellent captains, where you can say, as a manager, you can sort of pretty well say, okay, a couple of things, and then you leave it. There seems to be fewer of those about. But the role of captain is on a cricket side has always seemed to me more equivalent to the role of manager, almost like a player manager.
I mean, he's in charge out there.
He's in charge, and you see, the decisions have got. I think a lot more decisions have got to be made in a cricket match by the captain than decisions in 90 minutes made by a captain in a football pitch. Interestingly, one of the last few people to combine the two sports is Phil Neal, and I signed Phil Neal as a footballer at Lincoln City.
Did you teach him Russian as well?
Well, no, he'd already got that, but I always remember he's done so well as a captain. I was very interested because, a young boy, I have to say this, I couldn't see captaincy material basically in certainly not in football, but how well he's done at cricket. But he's probably the last of the two that's combined the two.
Well, it's a fascinating comparison. We've got to stop now because time is getting back. I must say, it's going to be the 13th match under your management, the next one, which takes place in September. Is that
against Germany, yes, against, as they say, the United Germany.
It won't be an unlucky 13, will it? You're going into, you'll win.
No, it won't be unlucky. I mean, the point about everything, not that it will happen, is that it sounds rather boastful to say I expect it to be undefeated, not myself personally, but the team. And hopefully, I mean, what's the point of going into any game expecting to lose it? So, no, I would expect to beat Germany and Turkey and Poland and France.
That's the spirit.
Going on. I expect to beat, but the time comes when you don't, and you've got to know how to lose. That's the important thing.
Well, I'm afraid we've had a bit of practice of that at cricket. Anyhow, jolly good luck with the soccer. Greham Taylor managed the England soccer team, and wish him luck in the World Cup when it comes, and we should be following with great interest. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And obviously a great cricket lover, and he's been watching today, and he'll be watching with great intensity after lunch to see whether England can improve on their 4 for 2.
Well, England did improve on their 4 for 2, eventually all out for 255. It wasn't enough, though, with West Indies reaching their target of 152, just 3 down, Carl Hooper and Viv Richards seeing them home.